Hey everybody, thank you for purchasing the $3 steak. I saw Inside Out 2 this week, at least that is of the time of this recording, and I thought it was pretty good. I will say that I think it's a better story than it is a comedy. The jokes, for my experience anyway, they didn't make me laugh too much outside of the parodying of the cartoons, but rather the story itself is what was really intriguing. One thing I noticed about the movie is that the story focuses more on the emotions rather than the human characters this time around. And I think this was fine because it does a really good job at exploring anxiety, which I will get to in a bit. I found the movie to be relatable because I've had anxiety several times. A lot more now since being an adult rather than when I was a teenager, which does make me wonder, how would I have responded had this movie come out when I was a teenager? Would I still think it's good? What I do know is that it does a good job of portraying the thoughts of what a teenager in sports would think. See, when I was in high school, I used to wrestle. And a lot of what Riley would think in this movie lines up with a lot of what I used to think when I was in sports myself. Granted, I never went into a private office at night to steal the coach's notebook to read his thoughts about me. Spoiler alert. But I constantly think things to myself and to the effect of, if I could cut down to this weight, I could be really good. Or if I wrestled this person, I could learn a lot and how I could get better as a wrestler. So props to this movie for portraying that really well. Anger was definitely my favorite character here, but the focus was mainly on anxiety. And one thing I love about Inside Out 2 was how it portrayed anxiety. The movie started out seemingly to have anxiety play a purposeful antagonist, but over time it just showed that anxiety means well. It just didn't go about handling Riley's actions the best way due to its impulsive and overthinking nature. Anxiety's portrayal is relatable, and especially in the aspect of thinking of every worst case scenario possible. That's where I admittedly relate to anxiety the most because, well, that's what I do. The storytelling is well done and admittedly one of Pixar's best. I also thought Joy's character arc was really well done. She went through a lot of adversity, and try as she did to not let it slow her down, she did have a moment to break down, and the rest of the crew picked her up so that she could save the day inevitably. I also appreciate the fact that they took the time to show Joy realizing that she was also wrong in her methods of operation as well. Anger ended up saving the day first by summoning Pouchy, even though he really didn't want to. And this made for a really funny scene that I enjoyed, and this is why Anger was my favorite in the movie. Disgust had something of a shining role here as well. She definitely had more to say than in the first Inside Out, and the only emotion that I think didn't really get a turn here to shine was envy. Given her name, I feel like that's kind of on brand a bit. Still, I would have liked to have seen at least one moment for envy, but all she really got was an introduction, and embarrassment and ennui were also not featured very much outside of embarrassment covering for sadness, but I will say that I love their designs. I also appreciate how much sadness did for a moment to stall and to try to turn the tide around for Riley up until she was caught. I think Inside Out 2 did a great job conveying its messages without being too preachy. But one thing I do have to call out was that at one point, Joy says, maybe we just feel less joy as we get older. Now, I'm paraphrasing, so maybe that's not the exact quote, but just roll with it. So Joy says this, and there was nobody to refute it, and it wasn't really touched up again, and honestly, that's a terrible message to put in a movie like this. Don't get me wrong, I have no issues with something like this being put in any form of media, but I just feel like here it didn't fit. Like if this were on BoJack Horseman, an adult TV show where there's all sorts of negative input like this and all sorts of messages being made similar to this, I wouldn't think anything different about it. However, Inside Out 2 is not BoJack Horseman. Inside Out 2 is a children's movie, and this is a terrible message to send to children. At the very least, there could have been some sort of rebuttal or refuting of this point, but there wasn't, and I feel like that just didn't really sit well with me. With that said, the other messages I think are fine. Like, anxiety is here to stay and doesn't have to be a bad thing. it can be managed and seen at the end of the movie. Rather than letting anxiety worry about what is out of Riley's control, instead it focused on what could be in Riley's control, like her math test coming up that she could study for. This is just one of many lessons that could be learned from Inside Out 2. I enjoyed Inside Out 2. The experience was tremendous, and I highly encourage anyone to go and watch it. It's great for a family night, a date night, and when it becomes available to stream at home, great for a movie night as well. So thank you everyone for watching this review. You guys take care. If you want to support me, you may absolutely do so by purchasing an action figure on my toy store on Mercari. Link will be in my bio. Thank you and take care, everybody.